The muffler on my 2012 Honda Civic was hanging on by a literal coat hanger and a prayer. Every time I hit a pothole on the way to my parents' house, the car made a sound like a dying tractor. C-a-chunk, wheeze. It was the kind of noise that made people on the sidewalk stop and stare, wondering if the whole thing was about to explode. I pulled into the long, paved driveway of my childhood home in Providence, parking well away from the front entrance. I had to. If I parked too close, my father, Gary, would have an aneurysm. He liked the driveway to look a certain way, and that way involved sleek German engineering, not rusting Japanese economy cars with peeling clear coats. Sure enough, right there in the prime spot, bathed in the soft glow of the porch lights, was a brand new white Range Rover. It still had the temporary dealer tags on it. I sighed, killed the engine, and checked my reflection in the rearview mirror. I looked tired. Not the cute kind of tired, but the bone-deep exhaustion of someone who had spent the last 8 hours teaching 30 high school sophomores how to identify symbolism in The Great Gatsby, followed by 2 hours of grading papers in a coffee shop because my internet at home was acting up. I adjusted my glasses, smoothed down my thrift store cardigan, and grabbed the Tupperware container of homemade potato salad I'd brought. I walked up the steps, and before I could even ring the bell, the door swung open. It was my mother, Brenda. She was wearing a silk blouse that probably cost more than my monthly car insurance. She didn't smile. She didn't say hello. She just looked at the potato salad, then at my shoes, then at my face. "You're late, Rowan," she said, stepping aside to let me in. "And please tell me you didn't park that eyesore in front of the neighbor's view." "I parked by the street, Mom." "Good to see you too," I said, my voice flat. "Well, hurry up. The caterers are swamped, and Kylie needs help with the champagne tower. Go put an apron on. You know the rule, family helps family." I walked into the living room, and the noise hit me instantly. Laughter, clinking glasses, the smooth jazz playlist my dad curated for events like this. The house was packed with aunts, uncles, and family friends. And in the center of it all, holding court like royalty, was my sister, Kylie. Kylie was 32, 3 years older than me, and she was glowing. Literally. Her skin had that expensive sheen that comes from monthly facials and zero manual labor. She was wearing a shimmering gold dress that clung to her in all the right places, laughing loudly at something my Uncle Sal was saying. "Oh, stop!" Kylie shrieked, tossing her hair back. "It's not just a blog, Uncle Sal. It's a lifestyle brand. We're launching the consulting arm next month. Lux Life is going to be huge." I squeezed past a group of cousins, trying to make my way to the kitchen. My dad, Gary, intercepted me near the hallway. He was holding a scotch, his face flushed with pride. "There she is," he said, but he wasn't looking at me. He was looking past me, at Kylie. "You see your sister, Rowan? That's what ambition looks like. She just secured a partnership with a boutique in Newport." "That's great, Dad," I said, shifting the potato salad to my other hip. He finally looked at me, his eyes dropping to my scuffed boots. He frowned. "You know, if you put in a little more effort, maybe you wouldn't be stuck in that classroom making, what is it you make? 40,000 a year?" 50, I corrected. "And I have good benefits." "Benefits don't buy Range Rovers," he scoffed, clapping me on the shoulder hard enough to make me stumble. "Go help your mother. She's stressing out over the appetizers." I pushed through the swinging door into the kitchen. It was chaos, but controlled chaos. I set my potato salad down on a counter cluttered with empty wine bottles and fancy hors d'oeuvres trays. My mom shoved a silver platter of stuffed mushrooms into my hands before I could even take my coat off. "Table 4 needs these. Then come back and start washing the wine glasses." "The rental company didn't send enough," Brenda barked. I did as I was told. I walked around the room, offering mushrooms to people who barely made eye contact with me. I was the help. I was the invisible daughter. The one who followed the rules, got the safe degree, and lived a small, quiet life. To them, I was a cautionary tale of mediocrity. But as I circulated the room, I wasn't just looking at empty plates. I was looking at the house. I noticed the water stain on the ceiling in the corner that had grown 2 inches since Christmas. I noticed the draft coming from the old window frames they hadn't replaced. I knew, because I had run a credit check on my parents just for fun 3 months ago, that they had refinanced this house twice in the last 5 years to fund Kylie's failed startups. First, it was the organic dog treat bakery. Then the customized yoga mats. Now, Lux Life. They were bleeding money to keep up appearances, drowning in debt to paint a picture of success. I made my way to the back of the room, near the sliding glass doors. Sitting there, in a high-backed armchair that looked like a throne, was my grandmother, Nana Lucia. She was 85 years old, tiny, and dressed in black lace. She held a cane in one hand and a glass of dark red wine in the other. While everyone else swirled around Kylie, Nana sat alone, her sharp, dark eyes scanning the room like a hawk watching field mice. I walked over and knelt beside her chair. "Hi, Nana." Her face softened instantly. She reached out a hand, her skin like parchment paper, and cupped my cheek. "Tesoro. My treasure. You look tired." "Just a long week," I whispered. "They treating you like a waitress again?" she asked, her voice raspy but strong. She glared at my father across the room. "It's fine. I don't mind." "You mind," she corrected me. "You just have discipline. Unlike them." She gestured with her chin toward Kylie, who was now standing on a chair to make a toast about chasing dreams. "The wolves are hungry tonight, Rowan," Nana whispered, leaning in close so only I could hear. "Look at them. Drinking wine they can't afford, driving cars the bank owns. They look at me and they don't see a mother or a grandmother. They see a piggy bank." I squeezed her hand. "I know, Nana." "Good," she said, her grip surprisingly tight. "Keep your eyes open tonight. And keep your mouth shut. The time is coming." I nodded, standing up as my mother signaled frantically from the kitchen doorway. I touched the pocket of my cardigan. Inside was a heavy set of keys. Not the keys to my beat-up Honda, but a master ring that opened 12 multi-family homes across the city. Properties worth over $5 million. They thought I was the peasant serving the princess. They had no idea I already owned the kingdom. To understand why I was washing dishes at my sister's vanity party while secretly sitting on a real estate empire, you have to go back 5 years. Back to 2018. I was 24, fresh out of college, drowning in student loans, and working 2 jobs just to make rent on a basement studio apartment that smelled like mildew and desperation. My family barely spoke to me back then, mostly because I wasn't dazzling enough. I wasn't dating a doctor, and I wasn't launching a business. I was just Rowan. One rainy Tuesday in March, Nana Lucia called me. She didn't call my parents. She didn't call Kylie. She called me and told me to pick her up and take her to an appointment. I thought we were going to the doctor. Instead, she directed me to a brick building downtown with a brass plaque that read Thorne and Associates, attorneys at law. We walked into an office that smelled of old mahogany, dust, and expensive billable hours. Mr. Thorne, a man in his 60s with a suit that looked sharp enough to cut glass, was waiting for us. He didn't look like the kind of lawyer who chased ambulances. He looked like the kind of lawyer who buried bodies, legally speaking. Nana sat down, refused the offer of water, and looked at me. "Rowan," she said, her voice steady. "You know the properties. The 12 triple-deckers your grandfather and I bought over 40 years. "Of course," I said. "The rental houses. Your father," she spat the word out, "has been talking to me about liquidation. He says the market is hot. He says I should sell, move into a home, and give them their inheritance early so they can enjoy it. He calls it estate planning. I call it greed." She shifted in her chair, gripping her cane. "And your sister?" She came to me last week asking for a $50,000 loan for a vision. She didn't even have a business plan, Rowan. Just a vision. I stayed silent. I knew this. I knew Dad wanted to retire early to Florida and buy a boat. I knew Kylie saw Nana as an ATM. If I leave these buildings to them in my will, Nana continued, they will be sold within a year. Your father will buy a condo he can't afford, and your sister will snort or spend the rest. 50 years of sweat, gone. The tenants, good families who have been with me for decades, evicted so a developer can turn the lots into luxury condos. Mr. Thorne slid a thick stack of documents across the desk. It landed with a heavy thud. This, Mr. Thorne said, his voice deep and gravelly, is an irrevocable trust. I don't understand, I stammered. It means, Nana interrupted, that as of today, I am transferring the ownership of all 12 properties into this trust. And you, Rowan, are the sole trustee and the sole beneficiary. My mouth fell open. Me? Nana, I can't, the family will kill me. Dad will. The family won't know, she said sharply. That is the condition. This is an irrevocable transfer. Once signed, it's done. It's not an inheritance waiting for me to die. It happens now. You own them. But for the sake of my peace, and to test them, you will tell no one. Why me? I asked, feeling tears prick my eyes. I'm nobody. I'm just a teacher. Nana reached across the desk and took my hand. You are the only one who ever offered to help me sweep the sidewalk without asking for $5. You are the only one who visits me on Sundays when it isn't a holiday. You know the value of work, Rowan. You understand that these buildings aren't just numbers on a spreadsheet. They are roofs over people's heads. She looked me dead in the eye. I am giving you a burden, not a gift. You will have to manage them. You will have to deal with the taxes, the repairs, the tenants. And you will have to watch your family continue to beg and scheme, knowing you hold the keys. Can you do that? Can you be a ghost in your own life? I looked at the papers. Then I looked at Nana. I thought about the tenants, Mrs. Silva in the blue house who always made me cookies, the young couple in the Federal Hill house just starting out. I thought about my grandfather's hands, always covered in plaster and paint. I'll do it, I whispered. Mr. Thorne handed me a pen. Sign here, Ms. Romano. And here. And here. I signed my name. With each stroke of the pen, I wasn't just acquiring $5 million in real estate. I was signing a declaration of war against my own family. I just didn't know when the first battle would be. The reality of my double life hit me hard that first winter. It was Christmas Eve, 2018. My parents and Kylie had rented a chalet in Vermont for the week. They invited me, of course, but in that passive-aggressive way where they knew I couldn't afford the share of the rental fee, so they could feel good about asking without actually having to deal with me. Oh, such a shame you can't make it, Rowan. We'll send pictures. So, while they were sipping hot cocoa by a roaring fire and posting selfies with the caption #WinterWonderland, I was in the basement of the property on 3rd Street. It was 10 degrees outside. The boiler in the 3-family house had decided to commit suicide at 2 in the morning. I got the call from the second-floor tenant, a nice guy named Marco, telling me his radiator was making sounds like a dying whale and there was water on the floor. I didn't call a property management company. I couldn't. I wanted to learn every inch of these buildings, and I wanted to save money to build up the trust's reserves. So, I called the emergency plumber, a guy named Dave who Nana had used for 20 years, and I met him there. The basement was freezing. The air smelled of rust and old oil. Water was spraying from a cracked valve, pooling around my boots. She's done, kid, Dave said, wiping grease on his overalls. The expansion tank is shot, and the feeder valve is corroded. I can patch it for tonight, but you need a whole new system. How much? I asked, shining my flashlight on the rusted metal. For tonight? $600. For the new system? You're looking at $4,000 easy. $4,000. At that time, my personal bank account had maybe $1,200 in it. But the trust account? The trust account had the accumulated rent of 12 buildings. Do it, I said, my breath fogging in the cold air. Patch it now. I'll write you a check from the trust account. Can you install the new one on Tuesday? You're the boss, Dave said, getting to work. I stood there for 3 hours, holding the flashlight while Dave wrenched and cursed. My toes were numb. My clothes smelled like mildew. I was exhausted, lonely, and covered in grime. And yet, I felt something strange. I felt proud. I looked at the exposed beams of the ceiling above me. This house was built in 1920. It had survived hurricanes, blizzards, and economic depressions. It was solid. It was real. Unlike Kylie's vision or my dad's status anxiety, this boiler was a real problem with a real solution. I wasn't just fixing a heater. I was protecting the family sleeping upstairs. I was preserving the asset my grandfather had laid bricks for. When I finally got back to my tiny apartment at 5 in the morning, I checked my phone. I had a text from Mom. Picture of a giant prime rib roast. Text, dinner is served. So sad you're missing this. Maybe next year if you save up. I looked at my grease-stained hands. I looked at the picture of the prime rib. I saved $4,000 today, Mom, I whispered to the empty room. I just didn't spend it on meat. I took a shower, scrubbed the rust off my skin, and went to sleep. I didn't dream about ski lodges. I dreamed about copper piping and interest rates. The teacher was dying. The landlord was being born. For the next 4 years, from 2019 to late 2022, I became an expert in camouflage. Most people try to hide their poverty to look rich. I did the exact opposite. I hid my wealth to look struggling. It was a strange, psychological tightrope walk. Every morning, I woke up in my small apartment, drove my rattling Honda Civic to the high school, and taught literature to teenagers. I graded papers, I ate sandwiches wrapped in foil for lunch, and I wore cardigans I bought from Goodwill. To my colleagues, I was Ms. Romano, the quiet, dedicated teacher who probably had a lot of student debt. To my family, I was poor Rowan, the unambitious daughter who lacked the spark to make something of herself. But at night, and on weekends, I was a different person entirely. I was the CEO of a property management empire that was generating over $22,000 a month in gross rent. After taxes, insurance, and the aggressive maintenance schedule I set for myself, I was netting around $15,000 every single month. I didn't spend a dime of it on myself. Not one penny. While Kylie was leasing a BMW she couldn't afford and my parents were financing a trip to the Amalfi Coast, I was sitting in my kitchen with a calculator, deciding whether to replace the windows on the Elm Street triplex or upgrade the electrical panel at the North End property. I chose the windows. They cost $12,000. I wrote the check without blinking. The hardest part wasn't the work, it was the logistics of the lie. The family assumed Nana Lucia was still running things, or that her lawyer friend Mr. Thorne was handling the details. They were too lazy to ask questions. To them, the rental properties were just these abstract things that existed in the background, like magic money trees that they would eventually harvest. They didn't want to know about the leaky roofs or the city inspections. I became the designated runner for Nana. Every Sunday, I went to Nana's house for dinner. While the sauce was simmering, I would go through the mail. I sorted the tax bills, the water bills, the insurance notices. I put them in my bag, took them home, and paid them from the trust account. If my dad ever asked, "How's the business holding up?" I would just shrug and say, "You know Nana. She has Mr. Thorne handling everything. I just pick up her prescriptions." He would nod, relieved. "Good. I don't want you getting distracted from your teaching. You need that tenure." The irony was suffocating. I had more liquid cash in the trust's reserve fund than my father had in his entire 401k, but he was lecturing me about job security. There were close calls, of course. In the summer of 2021, the market went crazy. Real estate prices in Providence skyrocketed. My uncle Sal, who fancied himself a savvy investor because he watched a lot of cable news, started making noise at a 4th of July barbecue. "Frank," he said to my dad, waving a hot dog bun. "You're sitting on a gold mine. That triple-decker on Federal Hill? I bet you could get $800,000 for it right now. As is. Cash." My dad's eyes lit up. "You think so?" "I know so," Sal said. "Why wait? Convince Mom to sell one. Just one. Test the waters." I was standing 5 feet away, marinating chicken wings. My heart hammered against my ribs. I knew exactly why they couldn't sell it. Because Nana didn't own it anymore. I did. If they tried to sell, they would run a title search. And if they ran a title search, they would see the Romano Family Trust, Rowan Romano, trustee. I had to intervene. I walked over, wiping my hands on a towel. "I don't know, Uncle Sal," I said, keeping my voice casual. "I drove by there yesterday. The foundation looks like it has some cracks. And I heard the zoning laws changed for that block. Might be a hard sell without major repairs." It was a lie. The foundation was rock solid. I had just repointed the masonry myself 2 months ago. But I knew my audience. Dad frowned. "Repairs? I'm not paying for repairs." "Exactly," I said. "Might be better to let the market settle. You don't want to get lowballed." Dad nodded, his greed dampened by the prospect of actual work. "Rowan's right. Better to wait until Mom passes. Then we can gut the place and sell it clean." I walked back to the grill, my hands shaking. They were already planning the gutting. They were already spending the money. I realized then that my masquerade wasn't just about privacy. It was a siege. I was holding the fortress gates closed while the barbarians circled outside, waiting for the queen to die. By 2022, the cracks in my family's facade weren't just hairline fractures, they were gaping holes. And the biggest sinkhole of all was my sister, Kylie. Kylie's lifestyle brand, Luxe Life, had imploded spectacularly. Apparently, spending $50,000 on branding photos and launch parties without actually having a sellable product isn't a sound business strategy. She was being sued by 2 vendors for non-payment, and her credit card debt was rumored to be hovering around the $60,000 mark. The tension came to a head at a Sunday dinner in October. The mood at the table was heavy. Nana was eating silently, her hands trembling a bit more than usual. My mom, Brenda, was pushing food around her plate, looking like she wanted to scream. "So," Mom started, her voice tight. "Kylie has a new opportunity. A really exciting pivot." I took a sip of water. "That's great. What is it?" "Real estate staging," Kylie said, flipping her hair. She looked thinner, haggard even, despite the heavy makeup. "I have the eye for it. I just need some capital to buy inventory. Furniture, art, decor. You know, to build the portfolio." "How much?" I asked. $20,000, Kylie said quickly. "Just a bridge loan." Silence descended on the table. $20,000. I had just deposited a rent check for $4,000 that morning. I could have written Kylie a check right then and there. But I knew where it would go. It wouldn't go to furniture. It would go to her Amex bill and a vacation to decompress. "I can't help you," Dad mumbled, staring at his lasagna. "The market is down. My portfolio took a hit." Mom turned her gaze to me. It wasn't a look of hope, it was a look of entitlement. "Rowan? You don't have many expenses. You drive that old car, you live in that tiny apartment. You must have savings." I put my fork down. "I have savings, Mom. But that's for my emergency fund. I'm on a teacher's salary. I can't just drop $20,000. Kylie slammed her hand on the table. Oh, come on. You're so selfish. You hoard your little paycheck while I'm actually trying to build an empire. An empire? I repeated, fighting the urge to laugh. Kylie, you're being sued. That's a misunderstanding, she shrieked. Then she turned to Dad. This is ridiculous. Why are we begging her for scraps? We have assets. Nana has 12 buildings sitting there collecting dust. We should sell the one on Pine Street. It's ugly anyway. My blood ran cold. The Pine Street house. It was a beautiful Victorian. I had just spent 6 months restoring the original woodwork in the entryway. I knew every tenant by name. Nana is not selling, I said, my voice sharper than I intended. Why not? Kylie snapped. She's 84. What does she need 12 houses for? Sell one, give me the cash as an advance on my inheritance, and I can fix everything. It's simple math. It's not simple math, I said. It's cannibalism. Excuse me? Mom gasped. You're talking about carving up Nana's life work like it's a turkey carcass, I said, looking at Kylie. You don't want to build a business. You want a bailout. You're useless, Kylie sneered, standing up. You're a jealous, small-minded little teacher who wants everyone to be as miserable and poor as you are. When Nana dies, and I'm in charge, things are going to be different. She stormed out of the room. Mom glared at me, then followed her. Dad poured himself another glass of wine, refusing to look at me. I looked over at Nana. She hadn't said a word. She just winked at me. A slow, deliberate wink. Later, as I was helping Nana into bed, she whispered, Pine Street looks beautiful, tesoro. The new paint color. Sage green. I like it. I froze, tucking the blanket around her. You saw it? I had Mr. Thorne drive me by last week, she smiled weakly. They see an ugly building to sell. I see what you built. Hold the line, Rowan. Do not let them break you. I won't, I promised. But as I drove home that night, gripping the steering wheel of my shaking Honda, I realized the clock was ticking. Kylie was desperate. Desperate people do dangerous things. By early 2023, the pressure was coming from all sides. While my family was fighting their financial demons, I was fighting a very real, very physical threat in one of my buildings. I called him the tenant from hell. His name was Jax, and he had moved into the first floor of property number 6, a sturdy brick building in a working-class neighborhood. He wasn't on the lease, he was the boyfriend of the woman who lived there, but when she moved out in the middle of the night, he stayed. And then the trouble started. Loud music at 3 a.m. Foot traffic in and out of the apartment all night long. Needles found in the hallway. The tenants on the second and third floors, a nice elderly couple and a single mom with a baby, were terrified. They called me, whispering into the phone that they were afraid to leave their apartments. This was the part of being a landlord that HGTV never shows you. I couldn't call my dad for advice. I couldn't vent to my mom. I had to handle it. I hired a private investigator to document the activity. I worked with Mr. Thorne to file the eviction paperwork. But in Rhode Island, the law favors the tenant, even the squatting ones. It was a slow, grinding process. One Tuesday in February, I had to go to housing court. I called in sick to school, put on my most professional blazer, one I kept hidden in the back of my closet, and went to face Jax. He was there, looking smug, wearing a leather jacket and smelling like stale smoke. He tried to intimidate me in the hallway before the hearing. You're just a little girl, he sneered, leaning over me. You don't want problems with me. I know where this building is. I know things happen to buildings. My stomach twisted, but I didn't step back. This building was my responsibility. Those families upstairs were depending on me. And I know that you have 3 outstanding warrants for distribution, I said, my voice steady, channeling every ounce of my inner Nana. Mr. Thorne has already spoken to the prosecutor. You can leave my building voluntarily by Friday, or the sheriff will remove you, and the police will be waiting to discuss your other business ventures. His smugness vanished. He looked at Mr. Thorne, who was standing behind me like a silent executioner, holding a thick file. Jax moved out on Thursday. I spent that entire weekend cleaning the apartment. It was trashed. There were holes in the drywall, garbage piled waist high, and a smell that made my eyes water. I scrubbed floors until my hands were raw. I patched walls until my shoulders burned. I hauled 20 bags of trash to the dump. On Saturday afternoon, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Mom. Hey. We're having a little spring fling get-together tonight. Kylie needs cheering up. Can you bring 3 bags of ice? And maybe that potato salad you make? But try to be on time this time. I looked at the text. Then I looked at the pile of trash bags I was dragging to the curb. I was covered in dust, sweat, and grime. I had just single-handedly secured the safety of a building worth $400,000. I had faced down a criminal. And my mother wanted me to be the ice delivery girl. I typed back, "Sure, Mom. See you at 6. I went home, took a 2-hour shower to scrub the landlord off my skin, and put on my teacher costume. I bought the ice. I made the potato salad. When I arrived, Kylie was complaining about how unfair the world was to entrepreneurs. Dad was nodding sympathetically. Mom criticized my hair. You look exhausted, Rowan, she said, sipping her Chardonnay. You really should try to sleep more. Maybe if you didn't spend so much time grading papers, you'd have a life. I smiled, handed her the bag of ice, and walked away. I have a life, I thought, grabbing a soda. I have 12 lives. And I'm protecting all of them from people like you. But I knew the masquerade couldn't last forever. Nana was getting weaker. The wolves were getting hungrier. And sooner or later, they were going to stop asking for scraps and try to take the whole table. Thanks for listening to the story so far. If you're enjoying watching Rowan build her secret empire right under her family's nose, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. It really helps us out. Also, let me know in the comments, what city are you listening from? I'd love to see where our community is growing. Now, let's get back to the drama. Spring of 2023 brought a thaw to the frozen ground of Rhode Island, but it brought a chill to my heart that I couldn't shake. Nana Lucia began to fade. It started with small things. She forgot the name of her favorite tenant. She left the stove on. Then, in late April, the call came. I was in the middle of a lecture on Hamlet when my phone buzzed with a call from her neighbor. Nana had collapsed in her garden. I beat the ambulance to the hospital. When I sprinted into the ER waiting room, chest heaving, I expected to see my family there. They lived 10 minutes closer than I did. But the room was empty. I sat alone for 2 hours before my father, Gary, finally strolled in. He wasn't running. He was checking his watch. Mom was trailing behind him, complaining about the cost of hospital parking. Is she stable? Dad asked, not looking at me, but at the triage nurse. She's in the ICU, I said, standing up. It was a minor stroke. She's conscious, but weak. Great, Mom sighed, dropping into a plastic chair. Do you know if her insurance covers the ICU? Or is this coming out of the estate? I stared at her. The estate? Mom, she's still alive. She's right through those doors. I'm just being practical, Rowan, Mom snapped. Care facilities are expensive. If she needs long-term care, that money drains fast. We need to protect the assets. They didn't go in to see her immediately. They sat in the hallway and argued about power of attorney. I walked away, my hands balled into fists so tight my fingernails cut into my palms. I went into the ICU. Nana looked so small in the bed, hooked up to beeping monitors. Her face was pale, but her eyes were open. When she saw me, she tried to smile. One side of her mouth didn't quite lift. "The wolves," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the hum of the machinery. "Are they here?" "They're outside, Nana," I said, taking her hand. It felt frail, like a dried leaf. "They're worrying about the parking meter." She closed her eyes. A tear leaked out. "Don't let them, Sel." "Not yet." "I won't," I promised. "I'm the wall, remember? Nothing gets past me." For the next 2 weeks, I lived a double life that was even more exhausting than before. By day, I taught. By afternoon, I managed the properties, handling a roof leak at the Broadway house and a vacancy at the North End triple-decker. By night, I slept in the chair beside Nana's hospital bed. My parents and Kylie visited sporadically. They treated it like a photo op. Kylie would come in, hold Nana's hand for exactly long enough to take a selfie for her Instagram story with the caption, "Praying for my angel #family first," and then she would leave to go to brunch. They never asked the doctors about her recovery. They only asked about the timeline. "How long until we know?" Dad kept asking. "How long until we have to make decisions?" They meant end-of-life decisions. They were practically checking their watches, waiting for her to die so the reading of the will could begin. But the breaking point wasn't their callousness. It was the theft. While Nana was in the hospital, I had to go to her house to gather her personal documents for the discharge planning. We were moving her to hospice care, home hospice, at my place, because my parents refused to take her in. "We don't have the room," they lied, despite having a 4-bedroom house. I was sitting at Nana's kitchen table, sorting through her personal mail, the stuff that wasn't related to the properties. Her personal checking account statement was sitting on top of the pile. I opened it, expecting to see the usual, grocery bills, utility payments, the monthly donation to the church. Instead, I saw a withdrawal. $2,000, cash. Dated February 14th. Then another. $3,000. March 2nd. Then a check written to cash for $5,000 on March 15th. My stomach dropped. Nana hadn't left the house in March except for church. She certainly hadn't gone to the bank to withdraw thousands of dollars. I pulled up the online banking on her iPad. I had her passwords because I helped her set it up. I clicked on the image of the cashed check. The signature was Nana's name, but it wasn't Nana's hand. The L in Lucia was too loopy. The slant was wrong. It looked shaky, forced. I recognized that loop. I had seen it on birthday cards for 29 years. It was Kylie's handwriting. I sat back in the chair, the room spinning. I went through the last 6 months of statements. The total missing was $25,000. $25,000 stolen from an 85-year-old woman who was lying in a hospital bed. I grabbed my phone and called Mr. Thorne immediately. "Mr. Thorne," I said, my voice trembling with rage. "I need you to run a forensic accounting on Nana's personal Chase account. Now." "Rowan?" He sounded concerned. "What did you find?" "Kylie," I spat the name out like poison. "She's been forging checks. She's been draining Nana's personal savings. Probably to pay off her credit cards." "Do you want to file a police report?" Mr. Thorne asked. His voice shifted instantly from concerned friend to legal shark. I looked at the statement. I thought about Kylie taking selfies in the ICU. I thought about my dad lecturing me about ambition. "Not yet," I said cold. "Why? If I call the police now, they'll lawyer up and drag it out. They'll claim Nana gave her permission. It's he said she said." "So what do you want to do?" "I want to wait," I said. "They're planning a meeting, aren't they?" Dad mentioned a family summit to discuss the estate. "Yes," Thorne confirmed. "Your father called my office yesterday. He wanted to know if I had the deeds ready for transfer." "Let them have their meeting," I said. Let them lay out their plans. Let them think they've won. And when they put their cards on the table, I'm going to burn the whole table down. Understood, Thorne said. I will prepare the binder. I hung up. I looked at the forged check on the screen one last time. Then I took a screenshot and saved it to a folder named Evidence. The teacher in me was gone. The granddaughter was grieving. But the landlord? The landlord was ready to evict. August 2023. The air was thick and humid, the kind of heat that sticks to your skin. Nana was resting in the guest room of my apartment. I had hired a private nurse to help during the day while I taught summer school, paying for it out of the trust. My parents assumed Medicare was covering it. I didn't correct them. On a Tuesday afternoon, my phone pinged with a notification from the Romano family group chat, a chat I had been muted in for years. Mom, Sunday, August 20th, 1 p.m. Our house. Mandatory attendance. Dad, topic, estate transition and asset liquidation. We need to make decisions before Mom gets worse. No excuses. Kylie, I have some great ideas. I've been doing market research. House money with wings. I stared at the screen. Asset liquidation. They weren't even hiding it anymore. They were planning to sell the properties while Nana was still breathing in my guest room. I walked into Nana's room. She was awake, looking out the window at the bird feeder I'd set up. They called the meeting, I told her gently. Nana turned her head slowly. She couldn't speak much anymore, the aphasia from the stroke had worsened, but her mind was still there. She looked at me, her eyes fierce. She lifted her hand and made a shooing motion, then pointed at me. Go. You want me to end it? I asked. She nodded. Then she reached for the notepad we used to communicate. With a shaking hand, she wrote one word, justice. I kissed her forehead. Okay, Nana. I'll bring you justice. I spent the rest of the week preparing. I didn't grade papers. I didn't clean gutters. I prepared for war. I met with Mr. Thorne 3 times. We organized everything. The original trust documents from 2018. The 5 years of tax returns filed under the trust's EIN. The bank statements showing every dollar of rental income going into the trust account, and every dollar of expenses coming out. The receipts for the new roofs, the boilers, the repointed brickwork. And, in a separate red folder, the bank statements showing Kylie's theft. On Sunday morning, I woke up early. I didn't put on my usual cardigan or my scuffed boots. I went to the back of my closet and pulled out a suit I had bought for this exact day. It was charcoal gray, tailored, and sharp. I put on heels. I pulled my hair back into a tight bun. I looked in the mirror. I didn't look like Ms. Romano the teacher. I looked like the CEO of a multi-million-dollar corporation. I got into my Honda, the last time I would drive this rust bucket to their house, and headed to the suburbs. I wasn't the invisible granddaughter anymore. I was the owner. And I was coming to collect. I arrived at my parents' house at exactly 1 p.m. The driveway was full. Kylie's leased Mercedes was there, parked crookedly. Uncle Sal's truck was there. I walked in without knocking. The living room had been rearranged. The coffee table was pushed aside. Rows of folding chairs faced the television, which was connected to Kylie's laptop. It looked less like a family gathering and more like a shareholder meeting for a failing company. You're here, Mom said, looking up from a tray of cookies. She stopped. She looked at my suit. Why are you dressed like that? You look like you're going to a funeral. Just came from church, I lied smoothly. Thought I'd stay formal. Well, sit in the back, Dad waved a hand. Kylie has a presentation. I took a seat in the back row, next to my younger cousin Maya. Maya was 19, smart, and the only other person in the family who saw through the nonsense. She rolled her eyes at me and whispered, "Can you believe this? They have a PowerPoint. Watch and learn, Maya, I whispered back. Dad stood up at the front of the room. He cleared his throat. Thank you all for coming. As you know, Mom isn't doing well. And the reality is, she has a significant portfolio of assets that are currently being underutilized. Today, we're going to discuss the plan for the Romano estate. He gestured to Kylie. She stood up, holding a laser pointer. She beamed, clicking the first slide. Project Freedom, maximizing the legacy. Okay, guys, Kylie started, using her influencer voice. I've been crunching the numbers. Grandma has 12 properties. Based on Zillow, the total value is around $5 million. A murmur of excitement went through the room. Uncle Sal licked his lips. However, Kylie continued, managing tenants is hard work. It's gross. Who wants to deal with clogged toilets? Not me. She clicked to the next slide. It showed a map of Providence with big red X's over 8 of the properties. My proposal is simple. We liquidate the 8 oldest buildings immediately. I have a contact at a development firm who is willing to make a cash offer. It's a bit below market value, but it's fast. We take that cash, approximate $3 million, and we split it. And the other 4? Uncle Sal asked. We keep the 4 nicest ones, Kylie smiled. I will manage them personally. I'll turn them into luxury herbs. Luck stays by Kylie. The passive income will be huge. What about the current tenants? Maya asked, raising her hand. Some of them have lived there for 20 years. We give them 30 days notice, Kylie shrugged. Progress is painful. Sorry. I sat there, stone-faced. They were talking about evicting Mrs. Silva. They were talking about selling the home I had bled for. Now, Dad stepped back in. To make this happen, we need to present a united front to the courts. Since Mom is incapacitated, I am petitioning for emergency guardianship to execute these sales. He pulled out a stack of papers. I need everyone to sign this document saying you agree with the plan. It will help expedite the judge's decision. He started passing the clipboards around. When it got to me, he didn't even hand me a pen. You don't really need to sign, Rowan, he said dismissively. This is mostly for the major stakeholders. But you can sign as a witness. Major stakeholders? I repeated, my voice carrying across the room. Well, yeah, Kylie laughed. I mean, you're a teacher, Rowan. You don't know anything about real estate or finance. We're doing this for you, really. You'll get a nice little check. Maybe you can finally buy a car that doesn't sound like a lawnmower. The room chuckled. I stood up. I didn't smile. I walked to the front of the room, standing between Kylie and the projector screen. The light from the projector hit my face, blinding me for a second, but I didn't blink. Actually, I said, I have a question about slide 2. Sit down, Rowan, Mom hissed. No, I said. Slide 2. You valued the Federal Hill property at $400,000. That's interesting. Because I just had the roof replaced and the electrical updated to code. The appraisal came in at $650 last week. Kylie frowned. What? You didn't have it appraised. Why would you? And the Pine Street house, I continued, stepping toward her. You want to turn it into an Airbnb? The zoning board denied short-term rental permits for that district 3 months ago. I know, because I attended the hearing. The room went silent. Dad looked at me, confused. How do you know that? I reached into my blazer pocket and pulled out my phone. I sent a single text message, now. I know, I said, looking at my father, because I'm the one who pays the property taxes. I'm the one who hires the contractors. I'm the one who evicts the drug dealers. You? Kylie scoffed. Please. You grade papers. Did anyone here, I asked, scanning the room, bother to check the county registry of deeds? Did anyone check the title on the properties? Anyone? In the last 5 years? Dad's face went pale. What are you talking about? The front door opened. Heavy footsteps echoed in the hallway. Mr. Thorne walked into the living room. He was carrying a large, leather briefcase. He didn't look at anyone. He walked straight to the coffee table, moved Mom's cookie tray aside, and set the briefcase down with a loud thud. Who is this? Uncle Sal demanded. My name is Robert Thorne, he announced, his voice booming. I am the attorney for the Romano Family Trust. He opened the briefcase. The Romano Family Trust? Dad sputtered. Mom never set up a trust. She did, Mr. Thorne said calmly. On March 12, 2018. He pulled out a document, stamped with the official seal of the City of Providence. He held it up. This is the deed of transfer for 142 Elm Street. Transferred from Rosa Romano to the Romano Family Trust. He pulled out another. This is the deed for the Federal Hill property. Transferred 2018. He pulled out another. And another. He laid them out on the table like he was laying out a royal flush in poker. All 12 properties, Thorne said, were legally transferred out of Rosa Romano's personal name 5 years ago. They are not part of her estate. They are not subject to probate. And they are certainly not available for liquidation by her son. That's impossible. Kylie shrieked. Who controls the trust? We can just dissolve it. Thorne looked at Kylie with a look of pure pity. An irrevocable trust cannot be dissolved, Ms. Romano. That is the point. And as for who controls it? He pulled out one final document. The trust agreement. The trust is administered by a sole trustee and beneficiary. He pointed a finger at me. Rowan Romano. The silence in the room was absolute. It was the kind of silence that happens after a bomb goes off, before the screaming starts. My mother stared at me. Her mouth opened and closed, like a fish out of water. You? Dad whispered. You own the buildings? For 5 years, I said, my voice steady. While you were vacationing in Italy, I was replacing boilers. While Kylie was launching fake businesses, I was screening tenants. While you were ignoring Nana, I was protecting her legacy. You stole them. Kylie screamed, lunging toward me. Uncle Sal held her back. You manipulated a senile old woman. This is fraud. It is not fraud, Thorne interjected, stepping between us. Mrs. Romano was fully competent in 2018. We have video of the signing. We have 2 doctor's notes attesting to her capacity. And we have 5 years of Rowan managing the assets impeccably. I picked up the remote for the projector and clicked it off. The room went dim. You wanted to sell, I said to my father. You wanted to cash out 50 years of Nana's hard work to pay for your retirement and Kylie's mistakes. You called me useless because I drove an old car. But that old car, Dad? It was parked at the hardware store every weekend while you were golfing. Rowan, Mom said, her voice shaking, trying to switch to her manipulative mom tone. Sweetie, let's calm down. We're family. We can work this out. Obviously, you can't manage all this alone. We can bring Kylie in as a consultant. I laughed. It was a cold, harsh sound. A consultant? Kylie? I looked at Mr. Thorne. Show them the red folder. Mr. Thorne reached into his briefcase and pulled out the red folder. He slid it across the table to my father. What is this? Dad asked, his hands trembling as he opened it. That, I said, is a record of Nana's personal checking account for the last 6 months. Dad looked at the pages. He saw the highlighted lines. Withdrawal, cash. Withdrawal, cash. Check to cash. He mumbled. He looked up, confused. Who took this money? Flip to the last page, I said. He flipped it. It was the screenshot of the check. The one with the forged signature. "Kylie," Dad whispered. He looked at his golden child. "Kylie, what is this?" Kylie's face went from angry to terrified in a split second. I needed it. For the business. Nana said I could borrow it. She forgot. She's sick. Nana didn't say anything, I cut her off. Because Nana couldn't speak that week. She was in the ICU. And that signature? That's not hers. That's forgery, Kylie. That's elder abuse. That's a felony. It was a loan. Kylie cried, tears streaming down her face, ruining her makeup. I was going to pay it back when we sold the buildings. You were going to pay it back with her own money? I asked. That's not how loans work. That's how embezzlement works. I walked over to the table and leaned in, looking my parents in the eye. Here is the situation. I own the properties. All of them. There will be no sale. There will be no Airbnb empire. There will be no cash payout for your retirement. I pointed at the red folder. And regarding the $25,000 you stole, Kylie. Mr. Thorne has drafted a confession of judgment. Thorne placed a single sheet of paper on the table. You sign this, I said to Kylie. You admit to the debt. And you agree to a repayment plan. $500 a month until every cent is returned to Nana's account. If you miss a payment, or if you try to fight the trust in court, I will take this evidence to the district attorney. You wouldn't put your sister in jail, Mom gasped, clutching her pearls. Rowan, she's your sister. And Nana was her grandmother. I yelled, finally losing my cool. My voice cracked with the weight of 5 years of silence. She stole from a dying woman. Where was your outrage then, Mom? Where was your morality when you were planning to evict Mrs. Silva? I took a deep breath, smoothing my blazer. You have 5 minutes to decide. Sign the paper and leave me alone, or I call the police right now. The room was deathly quiet. Even Uncle Sal was looking at the floor, distancing himself from the blast radius. Kylie looked at Dad. Dad looked away. He was defeated. The Range Rover, the boat, the Florida condo, it all evaporated in front of his eyes. Sign it, Kylie, Dad whispered. Kylie sobbed, grabbing the pen. She scribbled her name. Mr. Thorne took the paper, checked it, and put it in his briefcase. Wise choice. I grabbed my purse. This meeting is adjourned, I said. Don't come to my house. Don't visit Nana. She doesn't want to see you. If you need updates on her health, Mr. Thorne will email you. Rowan, Mom cried out as I turned to the door. You're destroying this family. I stopped at the threshold. I looked back at the people I had spent my whole life trying to please. The people who had made me feel small so they could feel big. I didn't destroy this family, I said. I just turned on the lights. You're the ones who can't stand what you see. I walked out. I got into my Honda. I turned the key, and for the first time, the rattling engine sounded like victory. The fallout was spectacular. Kylie didn't just lose the money, she lost her social standing. Without the inheritance to back her up, her creditors swooped in. She had to sell the Mercedes. She moved back into my parents' basement, the very place she used to mock me for escaping. My parents tried to launch a PR campaign against me with the extended family. They called aunts and cousins, telling them I had manipulated Nana and stolen the birthright. But they forgot one thing, I held the keys. Uncle Sal called me a week later. Not to yell, but to ask if he could keep his contracting contract for the maintenance on the buildings. I know things are messy with your dad, Sal said, his voice sheepish. But business is business, right, Rowan? Business is business, Sal, I agreed. But rates are rates. You charge me fair market price, or I find someone else. Deal, he said. Just like that, the family fell in line. They followed the money. And the money was with me. Nana Lucia passed away 3 weeks after the meeting. She died in her sleep, in the guest room of my apartment, with the window open so she could hear the birds. I was holding her hand when she took her last breath. I didn't cry immediately. I just felt a profound sense of peace. She had held on long enough to see the transfer of power. She knew her legacy was safe. The funeral was awkward. My parents sat on one side of the aisle, I sat on the other. They wore black and cried loudly for the audience. I wore the same charcoal suit I had worn to the confrontation. I didn't cry. I stood tall. After the service, Maya came up to me. "That was badass," she said quietly. "What you did?" "It wasn't about being badass, Maya," I said. "It was about doing the job." "Can I?" She hesitated. "Can I work for you?" "I want to learn. Not the fake influencer stuff Kylie does. The real stuff." I looked at her. I saw myself from 5 years ago. Scared, but willing to work. "Meet me at the office on Monday," I said. "Bring work boots. We're inspecting a foundation." 2 years have passed since the confrontation. I don't drive the Honda Civic anymore. I drive a Ford F-150 truck. It's not flashy, but it's practical for hauling lumber and drywall. The Romano Trust has grown. I bought property number 13 last month, a distressed foreclosure that my dad would have turned his nose up at. I'm renovating it now. My parents and I don't speak. Last I heard, Dad had to come out of retirement to work part-time as a consultant because they couldn't afford their lifestyle without the inheritance. Kylie is working as a receptionist at a car dealership. She pays me $500 a month, every month. I donate her checks directly to a charity for elder abuse prevention. I was standing on the roof of the Federal Hill House yesterday, looking out over the city of Providence. The sun was setting, casting a gold light over the triple-deckers. I thought about Nana. I thought about the peasant and the princess. They wanted the harvest, but they despised the dirt. They wanted the title, but they hated the work. I lived in the dirt for 5 years. I learned that the dirt is where the value is. The dirt is honest. I checked my phone. A text from Maya. "Tenant in 4B says the sink is leaking. On my way to fix it." I smiled. The empire was in good hands. I am not the invisible granddaughter anymore. I am Rowan Romano. I am the landlord. And my tenants sleep safe tonight. So, that's my story. Was I too cold for threatening my sister with jail time and cutting off my parents completely? Or was it the only way to stop them from bleeding grandma dry? I read every comment, so let me know what you think. If you believe hard work should always beat entitlement, hit that like button. And if you want to see more stories where the quiet one takes it all, please subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching.